I now look to Tom Burgis to continue the case for the proposition.
At least they can take heart that under capitalism, if they find their arguments don't work, they can take them back and get a refund. Ladies and gentlemen, Evelyn Manguere, I'm going to talk to you about her. She's very grateful, very happy and very grateful. Not just for the beauty of her surroundings in eastern Congo, the lush slopes of the volcanoes going down to the shimmering waters of Lake Kivu and the mist-filled valleys, occasionally a glimpse of a gorilla. No, she's very grateful for having been blessed by ethical consumers. We know about her happiness and her gratitude because she explained it to someone from Oxfam who put it on YouTube. Evelyn has benefited from what Oxfam calls emancipation through fair trade cultivation. Her cooperative of coffee growers is striding forward in what we are told by Oxfam is its quest to increase its revenues from the international market. The flavour of the coffee is pleasant body, aromatic, fine acidity. You can order a 250-gram bag of it through Oxfam's website for just under £4. The website doesn't tell you precisely how much of the fair trade premium will go to Evelyn and her fellow farmers, but it does assure us that through this act of ethical consumption, we're helping to sprinkle schools and clinics and even gender equality in a region where life can be really very hard. Perhaps, though, we should hear just one more voice before we give ourselves a gold star for ethics in our dealings with the Congolese. What about Anna Rebecca Souza? She lives a few hours' drive from Evelyn along the mud road through the rainforest. Today, she's wearing a pink skirt with the word princess printed on it. Her expression is harder to read than Evelyn's smiling face in the Oxfam video. Maybe that's because she's only 5. Maybe it's because she's starving to death. Since her family fled their farmstead, she's tried to fill her belly with bits of root. Now her hair is falling out, her limbs are spindles dangling off a rib cage. Looking into her eyes, it's hard to tell if she understands that she'll soon be gone and whether it would be better or worse if she did. The Sousa family had to abandon the plot that sustained them because the fighting was closing in. That fighting has been going on for a generation. One of the ways that the predatory militias and the predatory army fund their activities is to sell minerals that are exported into global supply chains. Mainly this is gold and tantalum, a vital component in smartphones. If you've ever bought a smartphone, there's a fair chance that it had a sliver of eastern Congo pulsing inside it, and thus you may have contributed in a modest way to supporting the slaughter, mass rape, and relentless predation that these armed gangs undertake. A few years ago, some Western activists and then some Hollywood celebrities decided that they really must do something about this. They lobbied, and eventually the US Congress enacted a law that companies that use the minerals that are found under eastern Congo must certify that they are conflict-free. What were the consequences of this triumph of ethical consumerism? Mainly that a lot of Congolese miners lost their jobs. Sure, no one wants to spend their days dodging militias, but dodging militias while earning an income is surely preferable to dodging militias while going hungry. Because the fighting has not stopped. For one thing, reducing eastern Congo to a narrative suitable for a viral video left out all the other geographical, historical, colonial, ethnic, and personal forces behind the violence. 2 academics at the University of Ghent heard from local miners how the certification scheme to be conflict-free allowed buyers like Apple and Boeing to drive down the prices they pay. Meanwhile, the barons of the local trade, the mining kingpins, they simply spouted some flam about human rights and got themselves signed off as conflict-free businessmen by Western consultants who ensured their own security by hiring militiamen as guards. This is a version of what the Nigerian-American novelist Teju Cole, he calls the white savior industrial complex. The white savior industrial complex, he writes, is a valve for releasing the unbearable pressures that build in a system built on pillage. A system built on pillage. That certainly describes the fate of Eastern Congo. It is also an accurate description of the entire global economy. What happens when these downtrodden Congolese we're so keen to help turn to their own leaders? Surely they can at least depend on those who rule in their name to fight for the collective Congolese interest in the global economy. On December the 1st, 2010, as it happens just a few days after Anna Rebecca Souza died, Joseph Kabila, then Congo's president, received $1 million. This is revealed in a list of payments published in a New York hedge fund's guilty plea in a corruption case. The money had come from President Kabila's close friend, an Israeli called Dan Gertler. 2 days later, Gertler sent Kabila another $2 million, then another $2 million on the 7th, and another on the 9th of December. 2 more payments, one for $3 million and another for $750,000, came at the start of 2011. It was going to be an expensive year. There was a presidential election to be rigged in order for Kabila to stay in power. Now, Dan Gertler, we should say, through his expensive London lawyers, insists that he is no predator, but in fact the Congolese people's great benefactor. And indeed, he was doing us all a service. It seems that from the generosity he appears to have bestowed on President Kabila, that may have helped him secure the rights he has won to gargantuan deposits of copper and cobalt under southern Congo. Think how essential these metals are to our very civilization. Copper that wires the electricity grids that light the world. Cobalt from which we are fashioning the batteries that will power our sustainable future. Gertler's entrepreneurial brilliance has made him a billionaire, in large part by selling the mining rights on to multinational mining companies that dig the ores out of the ground and feed them into the global economy. 2 of these multinationals, Glencore and ENRC, they've been members of the FTSE 100, which is, of course, the list of the most valuable companies on the London Stock Exchange. Apart from conferring legitimacy upon their activities, this means that if you have a pension, and many of you may yet, you've probably personally profited from them. This is what global capitalism looks like once you get past the branding campaigns, the front companies, and the Swiss bank accounts. Apart from the West and China, pretty much every country is dependent on exporting commodities. Their role in the global economy is to supply the raw materials that the rest of us consume: the oil, the gas, the iron, the gold, the coffee, the cocoa, and so on. If you are one of the billions born in these places, your life is likely to be harder, sicker, and shorter as a result. When we buy these commodities, the essential ingredients of our comfortable lives, we are trafficking, frequently, in stolen goods. Where were our ethics when we decided that we would treat the rulers of these states as the legitimate owners of the commodities they sell us? When did the people of Equatorial Guinea consent to Teodoro Obiang selling their oil to ExxonMobil and the like, spectacularly enriching himself and his offspring, while consigning anyone who objects to the nightmarish recesses of Playa Negra prison? When did Kazakhs consent to Nursultan Nazarbayev doing something very similar? Every election in Kazakhstan's independent history has been stolen. Speak out, and you will be shot in the streets, or if you're lucky, merely beaten and sodomized by the secret police. And yet every day, barrels of crude flow from these countries and dozens like them into the supply chains that culminate in the wonderful material lives of the rich, which by any reasonable measure includes everyone in this room. The Fair Trade Foundation, the standard bearers of ethical consumption, say that every year the sale of all fair trade products worldwide generates a total premium of $200 million. That's roughly equivalent to the value of the collection of luxury property in California and Paris, rare Michael Jackson memorabilia, Bugattis, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Bentleys, and Rolls Royces amassed by the son of just one despot with whom we, through our representatives in the global economy, gladly do business every day, that one in Equatorial Guinea. If we are to grant ourselves the smug satisfaction as we sip our aromatic Congolese cappuccinos, we must tally both sides of the ledger. When we do that, we will see what those who peddle ethical consumerism are really selling. It's not emancipation, they're selling absolution. Thank you.